The Grand Chamber of the Federation Council had never been so quiet. Ambassador Thelvok of the Kethari Collective adjusted his 3 optical organs and looked around the massive room. Every seat was filled. Every species that held membership in the Galactic Federation had sent their representatives. This was historic. The lights dimmed as the holographic display at the center of the chamber flickered to life. The Federation Chancellor, a tall being covered in silver scales named Vornesh, stood from his elevated platform and raised one clawed hand for attention. But he did not need to. Everyone was already watching. "Today we gather to discuss Resolution 103, Vornesh said, his voice carrying through the chamber. A resolution that many of you have waited decades to see. A resolution that others have fought against with every resource available to them. But the evidence is now clear. The time has come." Thelvok shifted in his seat. He had been one of those who fought against this resolution. The Kethari had believed that no single species should be given such recognition. It went against everything the Federation stood for. But then the Vexnoth War happened, and everything changed. "Before we vote," Chancellor Vornesh continued, "I believe it is important that we remember how we arrived at this moment. For the younger delegates who may not fully understand the significance of what we are about to do." The holographic display shifted, showing a small blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. Earth, the homeworld of the humans. 60 standard cycles ago, humanity first achieved faster-than-light travel. They were young, primitive by our standards. Many of us believed they would destroy themselves before they could become relevant to galactic affairs. Vornesh paused. "We were wrong." Ambassador Zuranek of the Selthian Empire leaned forward in her floating chair. Her species had been among the first to make contact with humans. They had also been among the first to underestimate them. "When humanity arrived on the galactic stage," Vornesh said, "they were confused by our politics. They did not understand our alliances or our conflicts, but they learned. They learned faster than any species we had ever encountered." The display showed images of the first human diplomatic missions. Thelvok remembered those days. The humans had seemed so simple, so easy to manipulate. They asked obvious questions. They made basic mistakes. But somehow, within just a few years, they had negotiated trade agreements that benefited everyone involved, including themselves. "The Zarathi economic crisis of Cycle 48, Vornesh said. "Many of you remember this well. The Zarathi banking system collapsed. 3 major trade routes were disrupted. War seemed inevitable." Thelvok remembered. The Kethari had prepared for conflict. Everyone had. But then the humans had done something unexpected. Instead of choosing a side or staying neutral, they had offered to mediate. "Ambassador Sarah Chen," Vornesh said, and the display showed an image of a small human female with dark hair. She spent 14 standard days locked in negotiations with all affected parties. No one believed she could succeed. The Zarathi and the Malvek had been enemies for centuries. Their hatred ran deep. The chamber was silent. Everyone knew what had happened next. Ambassador Chen found common ground where none existed. She did not try to solve the economic crisis. She did not try to end the ancient hatred. Instead, she asked both sides a simple question. She asked them what they wanted for their children. Thelvok closed his optical organs for a moment. He had been in that room. He had heard the question. It had seemed foolish at the time. What did children have to do with banking and trade routes? Both sides answered the same way, Vornesh said. They wanted peace. They wanted prosperity. They wanted their children to have better lives than they did. Ambassador Chen built the entire agreement on that foundation. The Zaratha-Malvek Accord has held for 12 cycles. Trade has increased by 400%, and not a single life has been lost in conflict between the two species. The display shifted again, showing images of human diplomats across the galaxy. Trade agreements, peace treaties, cultural exchanges. In every case, the humans had found solutions where others had failed. But diplomacy is only half of this resolution, Vornesh said, his voice growing heavier. We must also speak of war. The images changed to show burning cities and shattered fleets. The Vexnoth invasion, the greatest threat the Federation had ever faced. The Vexnoth came from beyond our known space, Vornesh said. They did not want to negotiate, they did not want to trade, they wanted only to consume, to destroy, to conquer. Thelvok felt his body tense. The memories were still fresh. The Vexnoth had appeared without warning. Their ships had been massive, their weapons devastating. The Federation fleet had been scattered in the first engagement. 3 member worlds had fallen within the first month. We were losing, Vornesh said simply. Our combined military forces could not stop them. Our strategies failed. Our weapons were ineffective against their shields. Many believed the Federation would fall. The display showed the moment when everything changed. A human warship, much smaller than the Vexnoth vessels, moving through the chaos of battle. Admiral James Morrison, Vornesh said. He was given command of a mixed fleet after the Battle of Keth Prime. Most of us thought it was a desperate move. The humans had only been Federation members for 30 cycles. They had never fought in a major galactic conflict. How could they possibly succeed where our experienced admirals had failed? Thelvok remembered his own skepticism. He had argued against giving the humans command. He had called it madness. But the Federation Council had been desperate and the humans had volunteered. Admiral Morrison did something we had never considered, Vornesh said. He did not try to fight the Vexnoth directly. He studied them. He watched how they moved, how they attacked, how they communicated. And then he did something that our military strategists still cannot fully explain. The display showed the Battle of the Nebula, the defining moment of the war. He used our weakness against them, Vornesh said. The Vexnoth believed we were broken. They believed we would retreat, regroup, and make a final desperate stand at our core worlds. Admiral Morrison let them believe this. He ordered what appeared to be a full retreat. The image showed Federation ships pulling back, seemingly in chaos. The Vexnoth fleet had pursued, confident in their victory. But it was a trap, Vornesh said. The humans call it a feigned retreat, a tactic as old as their species. The Vexnoth chased our ships into a nebula that blocked their sensors, and then Admiral Morrison revealed the true strength of human military thinking. The display erupted with light as hidden ships attacked from every direction. Mines that had been placed days earlier exploded against Vexnoth hulls. The pursuing fleet was caught in a web of destruction they could not escape. In one battle, Admiral Morrison destroyed 40% of the Vexnoth fleet, Vornesh said. But more importantly, he showed us something about humans that we had never understood. They do not fight the way we do. They do not follow predictable patterns. They are capable of deception, of patience, of sacrifice on a scale that we find difficult to comprehend. Thelvok nodded slowly. He had watched the battle recordings dozens of times. The human tactics had seemed almost unfair. The Vexnoth had never expected such a trap. No species in the Federation would have considered such a strategy. It was too risky, too dependent on the enemy making specific choices. But the humans had made it work, and they had done it again and again. The Vexnoth War lasted another 2 cycles, Vornesh said, but the outcome was never in doubt after the Battle of the Nebula. Admiral Morrison continued to command our forces. He trained our officers. He shared human military doctrine with any species that wished to learn. And in the end, he led the final assault that destroyed the Vexnoth homeworld. The display showed the celebrations that had followed the victory. Every species in the Federation had cheered. The threat was ended. The galaxy was safe. Now, Vornesh said, his voice firm, we come to the resolution before us. Resolution 103. The formal recognition that humanity has proven itself supreme in both warfare and peaceful diplomacy. This is not about making humans better than other species. This is about acknowledging a simple truth. When we need peace, we call the humans. When we need war, we call the humans. They have earned this recognition through action, not words. Thelvok looked around the chamber. He saw doubt on some faces, pride on others, but mostly he saw acceptance. The evidence was simply too strong to deny. The vote would be held tomorrow, but everyone already knew the outcome. Resolution 103 would pass. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in her small office on the Federation station and read the news on her datapad. Resolution 103. She had heard rumors, of course. Everyone in the diplomatic corps had been talking about it for months, but seeing it officially announced by Chancellor Vornesh still felt strange. She set the datapad down and looked out the window at the stars. Earth was somewhere out there, too far away to see, but she could feel it. She had been born there, in a small town in what had once been called South America. She had never imagined she would end up here, representing her species to alien civilizations. Her door chimed. "Come in," she said. The door slid open and Commander Marcus Chen entered. He was tall, with broad shoulders and the confident bearing of a military officer. He was also her younger brother's best friend, which made their professional relationship occasionally awkward. "Ambassador," he said, nodding formally, "I wanted to discuss tomorrow's security arrangements." "Sit down, Marcus," Elena said, gesturing to a chair, "and drop the formality. I've known you since you were 12. Marcus allowed himself a small smile and sat. "The Cathari delegation has requested a meeting with you before the vote. They want to discuss their concerns about Resolution 103. Elena raised an eyebrow. Ambassador Thelvok, he was one of the strongest opponents of the resolution. Why would he want to meet with me? "Unknown," Marcus said. "But he specifically requested you, not the official Federation diplomatic staff. He said it was a personal matter." Elena considered this. The Cathari were an old species, proud and sometimes difficult to work with. Thelvok in particular had a reputation for stubbornness. If he wanted to talk privately, there had to be a good reason. "Set it up," she said. "This evening, if possible, and Marcus, keep this quiet. If Thelvok wanted this to be official, he would have gone through proper channels." Marcus nodded and left. That evening, Elena found herself in a private meeting room in the Cathari section of the station. The atmosphere had been adjusted for their comfort, which meant it was slightly too warm and humid for humans. She didn't complain. She had learned long ago that discomfort was often the price of diplomacy. Ambassador Thelvok entered through a side door, his 3 optical organs studying her carefully. He was older than most Cathari she had met, his shell showing the marks of many decades. "Ambassador Vasquez," he said, his voice translator giving his words a slightly mechanical tone. "Thank you for coming." "Ambassador Thelvok, I must admit I was surprised by your request." Thelvok gestured for her to sit, then settled onto his own resting platform. "I imagine you were. I have not been kind to your species in my public statements. I have called humans aggressive, unpredictable, dangerous." Elena kept her face neutral. "I'm aware." "I was wrong," Thelvok said. Elena blinked. That was not what she had expected. "Please understand," Thelvok continued, "I did not oppose humans out of hatred. I opposed giving any single species such power and recognition. The Federation was built on the principle of equality, of balance. Resolution 103 disrupts that balance." "And yet you're going to vote for it," Elena said. "It wasn't a question." Thelvok's optical organs shifted in what Elena had learned was the Cathari equivalent of a nod. "Yes, I am. Because I have realized something about your species that I did not understand before, something that makes you different from the rest of us." Elena waited. "You care," Thelvok said. "Truly, deeply care, not just about your own kind, but about everyone. When Ambassador Chen negotiated the Zarathamalvek Accord, she did not favor one side. She genuinely wanted both species to succeed. When Admiral Morrison led our forces in the war, he did not sacrifice non-human soldiers carelessly. He mourned every loss regardless of species. Alina thought about this. We're not unique in caring about others. No, Thelvok agreed. But you are unique in how you show it. The Cathari care about our allies. We help them when they ask, but we do not go out of our way to help them when they have not asked. We do not see their problems as our problems. Humans do. You see a crisis anywhere in the galaxy and you want to fix it, even when it is not your business, even when it might cost you greatly. Some would call that arrogance, Alina said carefully. Some have, Thelvok said. I have, but I have come to realize it is not arrogance, it is something else. Something my species does not have a word for. The closest I can translate is compulsive helpfulness. Alina laughed despite herself. That's one way to put it. I want you to understand why I am changing my vote, Thelvok said. It is not because I believe humans are superior to other species. It is because I believe humans are the only species that can handle this recognition without letting it corrupt them. Any other species given such power would eventually abuse it. Humans. I believe humans will see it as responsibility rather than privilege. Alina felt the weight of his words. He was right, of course. Most humans she knew would be uncomfortable with Resolution 103. They would see it as a burden, not an honor. There's something else, Thelvok said. Something I learned recently that confirms my decision. During the Vexnoth War, after the Battle of the Nebula, Admiral Morrison was offered a promotion that would have made him the supreme military commander of the entire Federation. He refused. I know, Alina said. He said he wasn't qualified for such a position. That is what he told the Council, Thelvok said. But I have learned the truth. He refused because he believed that giving a single species control of the Federation military would undermine the unity we had built. He was offered absolute power, and he turned it away to protect an ideal he believed in. Alina nodded slowly. She had met Admiral Morrison once at a diplomatic function. He had seemed uncomfortable with the attention, preferring to talk with junior officers rather than accept praise from dignitaries. Resolution 103 is different, Thelvok continued. It does not give humans power. It simply recognizes what is already true, and I believe that recognition is necessary. Why? Alina asked. Because the galaxy is changing, Thelvok said. The Vexnoth were not the last threat we will face. There are others out there beyond our borders watching and waiting. When they come, we will need humans to lead us again. And we will need them to do so without hesitation, without self-doubt. Resolution 103 gives humanity the mandate it needs to act when action is required. Alina considered this for a long moment. You're asking us to be the galaxy's guardians. I am asking you to be what you already are, Thelvok said. I am simply asking you to accept it. The conversation continued late into the night. By the time Alina returned to her quarters, she had a new understanding of what Resolution 103 really meant. It wasn't about superiority. It wasn't about power. It was about trust. The entire galaxy was trusting humanity to protect them when needed and to step back when not. It was an enormous responsibility, and Alina knew that humans would carry it because that was simply who they were. The morning of the vote arrived with a tension that hung over the Federation station like a storm cloud. Every corridor was filled with delegates, reporters, and observers from dozens of species. The vote on Resolution 103 had become the most significant political event in Federation history. Admiral James Morrison stood in his quarters adjusting his dress uniform. He was 63 years old now, his hair gray, his face lined with the marks of too many battles and too little sleep. He had been retired for 2 years, but the Federation Council had asked him to attend the vote. A symbol, they called him, a reminder of what humanity had done. He hated it. There was a knock at his door. "Come in," he said. The door opened and a young Celthian officer entered. Lieutenant Curavel, his former aide during the war. She had insisted on accompanying him to the station. "Admiral," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality of her species, "the shuttle is ready to take you to the main chamber." Morrison nodded and picked up his medals. He had received dozens of them during and after the war. He kept them in a drawer most of the time, preferring to forget the actions that had earned them. "You seem troubled," Curavel said. Morrison looked at her. She had served with him for 3 years. She knew him better than almost anyone. "I don't deserve this," he said. "The recognition." "Any of it," Morrison gestured at the medals. "I made decisions during the war that cost lives, thousands of lives. Humans, Celthians, Cathari, Malvek. I ordered them into battles I knew some of them wouldn't survive, and now the galaxy wants to call that supremacy." Curavel was quiet for a moment, then she spoke. "Do you remember the Battle of Keth Prime, when you first took command?" "Of course." "Do you remember what you said to us? To the non-human officers who had never served under a human commander?" Morrison shook his head. "You said that you didn't care what species we were. You said that every life under your command had equal value, and that you would treat every death as a personal failure. You said that you would never ask us to do anything you wouldn't do yourself." "I remember now," Morrison said quietly. "You kept that promise," Curavel said. "When the Vexnoth breached our defensive line at Sector 7, you didn't retreat to safety. You led the counterattack personally. You saved my ship. You saved me. I was just doing my job." "No," Curavel said, her voice firm. "You were being human. That is what Resolution 103 is recognizing. Not just your tactics or your victories. It's recognizing the way you fight. The way all humans fight. With courage, with creativity, and with genuine care for those under your command." Morrison was silent. He had never thought of it that way. "The galaxy is not saying humans are better," Curavel continued. "The galaxy is saying that when things are at their worst, humans are who we want leading us. That is not a burden, Admiral. That is an honor." Morrison looked at his former aide for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly and attached his medals to his uniform. "Let's go," he said. The grand chamber was even more crowded than the day before. Morrison was escorted to a special section reserved for honored guests. He found himself seated next to Ambassador Vasquez, who gave him a small nod of acknowledgement. Chancellor Vornesh called the session to order. The chamber fell silent. "We are here to vote on Resolution 103, Vornesh said. "The formal recognition of human supremacy in both warfare and peaceful diplomacy. Before we proceed, does any delegate wish to speak?" Several hands and appendages rose. Vornesh acknowledged them one by one. A delegate from the Zarathi spoke first. "My people were saved from war by a human ambassador who saw what we could not see ourselves. We vote in favor." A delegate from the Malvek followed. "Our ancient enemies are now our partners because of human wisdom. We vote in favor." One by one, species rose to give their testimonies. They spoke of trade agreements and peace treaties. They spoke of battles won and lives saved. They spoke of humans who had helped them without asking for anything in return. But not everyone was in favor. A delegate from the Tharvi hegemony stood. The Tharvi were a proud species, known for their military traditions. They had not participated significantly in the Vexnoth War, preferring to defend their own territory rather than join the combined fleet. "Resolution 103 is dangerous," the delegate said. "It gives one species too much influence. Today we recognize their skills. Tomorrow they will demand power. This is how empires begin." The chamber murmured with discussion. Morrison felt Ambassador Vasquez tense beside him. Another delegate rose. This one was from the Nethok, a species known for their philosophical debates. "The Tharvi raise a valid concern. How do we know humanity will not abuse this recognition? History shows that power corrupts. Morrison felt the eyes of the chamber turn toward the human section. They were waiting for a response. Ambassador Vasquez stood. "The Tharvi and Nethok speak of valid concerns," she said, her voice calm and measured. "They ask how you can trust humans with this recognition. They point to history as evidence of inevitable corruption, but I would ask them to consider a different perspective." She paused, looking around the chamber. Humanity has been a member of this federation for 30 cycles. In that time, we have had many opportunities to seize power. After the Zarathi economic crisis, we could have demanded permanent control of the trade routes we helped secure. We did not. After the Vexnoth War, we could have claimed territory from the species we saved. We did not. Admiral Morrison was offered supreme military command of the Federation, and he refused. Vasquez gestured toward Morrison. "Ask him why. Ask any human why we keep turning down power when it is offered to us." The chamber was silent, waiting. "It's because we know what power does to people," Vasquez continued. "Human history is filled with examples of power corrupting leaders and nations. We have seen it happen again and again. We have learned from those lessons. We do not want to become what our ancestors sometimes became. That fear, that self-awareness, is what makes humans different. We do not trust ourselves with absolute power, and that is exactly why you can trust us." The Tharvi delegate seemed unconvinced. "Words are easy. Actions over centuries will prove your claims." "You're right," Vasquez said, "but consider this. Resolution 103 does not give humans any formal authority. It does not change our voting rights or our representation on the council. It is simply a recognition of skills that we have demonstrated repeatedly and will continue to demonstrate. If humanity ever betrays the trust this resolution represents, you have the power to revoke it. We have no power to stop you." The chamber erupted in quiet discussion. Morrison watched as delegates conferred with their advisors. The Tharvi delegate sat down, his expression thoughtful. Chancellor Vornesh raised his hand for silence. "Are there any other statements before we vote?" Ambassador Thelvok of the Kethari stood. The chamber grew especially quiet. Everyone knew he had opposed Resolution 103 for years. "I have studied humans for a long time," Thelvok said. "I have watched their diplomacy and their warfare. I have analyzed their decisions and their motivations. For many years, I believed they were a threat to the Federation. Their unpredictability frightened me. Their rapid advancement worried me." He paused, his 3 optical organs scanning the chamber. "I was wrong. Humans are not a threat. They are a gift. They come into our conflicts with fresh eyes and see solutions we cannot imagine. They fight our wars with tactics that our enemies cannot predict. And they do all of this not for power or glory, but because they genuinely want to help." Thelvok turned to look directly at the human delegation. "I vote in favor of Resolution 103, not because humans are superior to other species, but because they are the best of us. They show us what all species could be if we tried harder. They remind us why the Federation exists in the first place." The chamber was silent as Thelvok sat down. Chancellor Vornesh nodded slowly. "We will now proceed to the vote. All delegates in favor of Resolution 103, please indicate." Lights began to appear across the chamber as delegates registered their votes. Green for favor, red for against. Morrison watched as the lights spread, most of them green. Even the Tharvi delegate, after a long pause, voted green. When the voting concluded, Chancellor Vornesh looked at the results and allowed himself a rare smile. "Resolution 103 passes," he announced. "With 94% approval, the Galactic Federation formally recognizes human supremacy in both warfare and peaceful diplomacy." The chamber erupted in applause. Morrison felt Ambassador Vasquez's hand on his shoulder. "Well, Admiral," she said, "it looks like humanity just became officially responsible for saving the galaxy." Morrison shook his head slowly. No pressure then. The celebrations lasted for days. Humans across Federation space received congratulations from their alien neighbors. News broadcasts analyzed the resolution from every possible angle. Historians debated its significance. Politicians argued about its implications. But for Lieutenant Commander Sarah Morrison, granddaughter of the famous admiral, life continued much as before. She stood on the bridge of her patrol ship, the FSS Harmony, watching the stars pass by on the viewscreen. "Commander," her first officer said, a Celthian named Talrek, "we're receiving a distress signal from the Outer Rim. A merchant convoy is under attack." Sarah straightened in her chair. "Source of the attack?" "Unknown. The signal is fragmentary. All we know is that multiple ships are involved and they're not responding to hails." Sarah looked at her crew. The Harmony had a mixed complement: humans, Celthians, Cathari, and a handful of other species. They had served together for 2 years. They trusted each other. "Set a course," Sarah ordered. "Maximum speed." The Harmony jumped to faster-than-light travel, streaking toward the Outer Rim. Sarah spent the transit time reviewing what little information they had. The convoy consisted of 6 merchant vessels carrying agricultural supplies to a colony world. The distress signal had been cut off after only a few seconds. When they dropped out of FTL, Sarah saw the devastation immediately. 3 of the merchant ships were destroyed, their hulls torn apart. 2 more were drifting, their power systems dark. Only 1 remained intact, surrounded by 4 ships of unfamiliar design. "Unknown configuration," Talrek reported. "Not in our database. Weapons are charged." Sarah studied the enemy ships. They were smaller than the Harmony but appeared heavily armed. Their design was angular and aggressive, unlike anything she had seen before. "Open a channel," she ordered. "All frequencies." "Channel open." "Unknown vessels. This is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Morrison of the FSS Harmony. You are attacking Federation ships in Federation space. Stand down immediately, or we will respond with force." There was no response. "They're ignoring us," Talrek said. Sarah nodded. "Then we make them listen. All weapons target the lead ship. Fire." The Harmony's weapons blazed, striking the lead attacker. Shields flared but held. The enemy ships immediately broke off from the convoy and turned toward the Harmony. "They're fast," Talrek observed. "Faster than us." "Then we don't try to outrun them," Sarah said. "We outthink them. Helm, take us into the debris field from the destroyed ships. Tactical, switch to point defense mode." The Harmony dove into the scattered wreckage of the destroyed merchant vessels. The enemy ships followed, but their speed became a disadvantage in the cluttered space. They had to slow down or risk collision. "Now," Sarah said, "all weapons full spread, target the closest 2 ships." The Harmony opened fire while simultaneously launching missiles in multiple directions. The enemy ships tried to evade, but the debris field limited their options. One took a direct hit and exploded. Another was damaged and began to drift. The remaining 2 ships pulled back, regrouping outside the debris field. "They're hesitating," Talrek said. Sarah smiled. "Good. They don't know what to expect from us. Helm, take us out of the debris field but keep the wreckage between us and them. Tactical, what's the status of the surviving merchant ship?" "Life signs detected. Approximately 40 crew members. Power systems are failing." Sarah made a quick decision. "We need to rescue those people, but if we get close, those ships will attack again. Talrek, what do you know about psychological warfare?" Talrek tilted his head. "I know that humans are particularly skilled at it." "Correct. Open a channel to the enemy ships. Wideband, make sure they can hear us." "Channel open." Sarah stood from her chair. "Unknown vessels, this is Commander Morrison. I have just destroyed one of your ships and disabled another. I am giving you one opportunity to retreat. If you do not take it, I will destroy you all. You have 30 seconds. She gestured for the channel to close. Commander, Talric said quietly, we are damaged. Our shields are at 60%. We may not be able to follow through on that threat. They don't know that, Sarah replied. They've never fought humans before. They don't know what we can do. All they know is that we just took out half their force in less than 2 minutes. They watched the view screen together. The 2 remaining enemy ships hung in space, their weapons still charged. Then slowly they began to pull back. A few moments later, they jumped to FTL and disappeared. Sarah allowed herself a small breath of relief. Helm, take us to the merchant ship. Prepare for emergency rescue operations. The next few hours were busy. The Harmony's crew worked tirelessly to rescue the survivors from the damaged merchant vessel. 43 people were saved, including 12 who required immediate medical attention. When it was over, Sarah sat in her ready room, writing her report. A knock at the door interrupted her. Come in. Talric entered. Commander, the survivors have asked to speak with you. They want to thank you personally. Sarah sighed. I was just doing my job. Talric smiled, a gesture he had learned from humans. That is what humans always say, but the rest of us see it differently. You saved 43 lives today. You faced unknown enemies without hesitation. You used tactics that our enemies could not predict. That is why Resolution 103 passed, Commander. Not because of words or politics, because of humans like you. Sarah looked at her first officer. Talric, my grandfather, never wanted to be a symbol. He just wanted to do the right thing. I feel the same way. I know, Talric said. That is precisely what makes humans worthy of the recognition. You do not seek glory, you seek justice, and you will risk everything to achieve it. Sarah stood and smoothed her uniform. Let's go thank the survivors for surviving, and then we need to report this attack to command. Those ships were new. Someone is testing Federation defenses. Do you think it's related to the resolution? Talric asked. Sarah paused at the door. Maybe. Some species out there might see Resolution 103 as a challenge, a reason to test us. If so, they're going to learn what my grandfather taught the Vexnoth. Which is? Sarah smiled grimly. Never underestimate a human. 6 months after Resolution 103 passed, the galaxy faced its first real test of the new order. The attackers from the Outer Rim had been identified as the Krelvok Dominion, a species from beyond known space. Like the Vexnoth before them, they had no interest in negotiation. They wanted conquest. Unlike the Vexnoth, however, they had watched the previous war carefully. They had studied human tactics. They believed they had found weaknesses to exploit. They were wrong. The Federation Council met in emergency session. Chancellor Vornesh addressed the assembled delegates with grave urgency. The Krelvok have attacked 17 outposts along our border. They are moving faster than the Vexnoth ever did. We must respond immediately. Every eye in the chamber turned to the human delegation. Admiral James Morrison, called out of retirement once again, stood slowly. He looked older than he had at the vote, the weight of command already settling onto his shoulders. The Krelvok believe they know how we fight, Morrison said. They've studied our tactics from the last war. They expect feints and traps. They expect unpredictability. So we're going to give them something they truly don't expect. He paused, looking around the chamber. We're going to talk to them. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Morrison raised his hand for silence. Before anyone objects, let me explain. The Krelvok are not the Vexnoth. We've captured some of their communications. They're not a mindless swarm seeking to consume everything. They have politics, factions, internal disagreements. They're attacking us because their leader promised them easy conquest. If we can show them that conquest will be costly, some of those factions might reconsider. Ambassador Vasquez stood beside him. While Admiral Morrison prepares our defenses, I will lead a diplomatic mission to the Krelvok. We will offer them an alternative to war. The Tharvi delegate rose. You would negotiate with an enemy that has already attacked us. This is weakness. No, Vasquez said firmly. This is strength. Strength enough to extend a hand even while holding a sword. We show them we can fight, but we would prefer not to. If they refuse, they will know that what follows is their choice, not ours. The council debated for hours. In the end, they approved both plans. Morrison would prepare the fleet while Vasquez attempted diplomacy. The diplomatic mission was the most dangerous assignment of Vasquez's career. She traveled with a small escort to the border region, where the Krelvok had established a forward base. They allowed her ship to land, curious about the humans who had become so famous. The Krelvok leader, a massive being with armored skin and 4 arms, received her in his command chamber. His name was Torvek, and he had led his people across the void between galaxies in search of new worlds to claim. You are the humans, Torvek said through a translation device. The ones who defeated the Vexnoth, the ones the Federation honors above all others. I am Ambassador Elena Vasquez. I represent both humanity and the Federation. Torvek made a sound that might have been laughter. You come alone to negotiate with an empire that has conquered dozens of worlds. You are either very brave or very foolish. Perhaps both, Vasquez admitted. But I am also very determined. I came to ask you a question, Torvek. The Krelvok leader tilted his head. Ask. What do you want? Not conquest for its own sake, not destruction for the joy of it. What do your people actually need? Torvek was silent for a long moment. Vasquez waited. She had learned that patience was often the most powerful diplomatic tool. My people fled our galaxy because it was dying, Torvek finally said. The stars were going dark. We traveled for generations to find a new home. When we arrived here, we found that all the good worlds were already claimed. Your Federation controlled everything we needed. So you're fighting for survival, Vasquez said, not glory. Glory is what we tell the warriors. Survival is the truth. Vasquez nodded slowly. What if I told you that the Federation has uninhabited worlds that could support your people? Worlds that we have cataloged but not colonized because we have more than we need. Torvek's expression was unreadable. You would give us worlds after we attacked you. We would negotiate a settlement. Your people would become Federation members, bound by our laws and treaties. In exchange, you would receive worlds, resources, and protection. Protection from whom? From whatever forced you to flee your galaxy, Vasquez said. If the stars there are dying, you won't be the only species running. Others will follow. And when they arrive, they'll face the same choice you face now. Fight us or join us. The negotiations continued for weeks. They were difficult, often frustrating, and more than once Vasquez thought they would fail. But gradually, progress was made. Torvek wanted to believe that peace was possible. His people were tired of war, tired of running, tired of being afraid. In the end, the Krelvok Accord was signed. The Dominion ceased hostilities and agreed to become Federation members. In exchange, they received 17 worlds on the Outer Rim, far from established colonies but rich in resources. Not everyone was happy with the outcome. Some Federation species felt the Krelvok should have been punished for their attacks. Some Krelvok believed their leader had shown weakness by negotiating. But the accord held, and over the following years, the Krelvok became valuable Federation members, their military strength adding to the collective defense. Admiral Morrison, who had prepared for a war that never came, retired again. This time, he hoped it would be permanent. But on the day the Krelvok Accord was formally celebrated, he gave one final speech to the Federation Council. When Resolution 103 passed, he said, many of you wondered if you had made the right decision. You wondered if humans could live up to the trust you placed in us. I hope the past months have answered that question. He looked at Ambassador Vasquez, who stood beside him. Humanity proved today that we can win wars without fighting them. We showed that strength and compassion are not opposites. We demonstrated that the best victory is one where everyone wins. He paused, his old eyes scanning the chamber. But I want you to remember something. What we did was not special because it was human. It was special because it was right. Every species in this chamber has the potential to do what we did. You all have courage. You all have compassion. You all have wisdom. The only difference is that humans were willing to take the risk. He straightened his uniform one final time. Resolution 103 recognized human supremacy in warfare and diplomacy, but I hope someday that resolution becomes unnecessary. I hope that every species will look at what humanity has done and say, we can do that too. Because when that day comes, the galaxy will be stronger than any one species could ever make it. The chamber applauded, but Morrison barely heard it. He was already thinking about home, about Earth, about the small house on the coast where he planned to spend his remaining years. He had done his part, now it was time to rest. As he walked out of the chamber, a young Krelvok officer approached him. The officer was small for his species, almost delicate with curious eyes. "Admiral Morrison," the officer said, "I wanted to thank you. My people almost made a terrible mistake. If not for humans, we would have destroyed ourselves in a war we could not win." Morrison studied the young officer. "What's your name?" "Keltok, sir. I am assigned to the new Federation Joint Training Program. I will be learning human military tactics." Morrison smiled. "Then learn this most of all, Keltok. The best tactics are the ones you never have to use. Fight only when you must. Seek peace whenever possible. And always, always remember that your enemy is someone's son or daughter, someone's friend, someone's hope for the future." Keltok nodded seriously. "I will remember, Admiral." Morrison patted the young officer's armored shoulder and walked on. Behind him, the celebration continued. Ahead of him, a new era beckoned. Humanity had been recognized as supreme in warfare and diplomacy. But what truly mattered was not the recognition. What mattered was using that position to make the galaxy a better place for everyone. That was the human way, and perhaps in time it would become the galactic way as well. In the end, Resolution 103 was not about human superiority. It was about human responsibility. The responsibility to protect, to negotiate, to sacrifice, and to hope. The responsibility to be the best that any species could be, and to inspire others to reach for the same heights. The galaxy had called upon humanity to lead, and humanity had answered, not with pride or arrogance, but with determination and humility. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.